Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Bryce. I'm a forecaster with the National Weather Service in El Paso, Texas, and this is Monsoon Awareness Week in the Southwest U.S. We've got joining us tonight forecasters and weather coordination meteorologists from several different weather offices around the Southwest. First up, also from El Paso, is the warning coordination meteorologist, John Fawcett. Say hi, John.
Hello, how are you?
And then north of El Paso is the Albuquerque Weather Office, and Kerry Jones, the weather coordination meteorologist from there, is joining us.
Hey, good morning, Tim, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Good evening. You know how it is in the weather service.
It is. We all work shift. We've got Glenn Lader over in the Tucson office. How are you doing tonight, Glenn?
I'm doing wonderful, Tim. Great to be here.
Great. And then in the Phoenix office, we've got a pair tag teaming. We have Jessica and Dan joining us. How are you guys doing?
Good. Hi, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Doing great.
Dan is a visitor. Jessica, you're a forecaster, right?
Yes.
And then Dan is from the Flood Control District of Maricopa County.
Yay!
I said it right. Very good. And finally, we have Glenn Lader, who, as you can see, is happily driving his car.
That's Alex.
Alex.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That's Alex Tardy. He's driving. He'll be joining us as soon as he gets settled. He was stuck in traffic. And he's waving at us. But I do thank you, everyone who's joining us and watching. What we're going to do is probably run for maybe 30 minutes or a little longer. We're going to be doing this each night, talking about different impacts in the Southwest monsoon. And each night's going to have a theme. Tonight's is flash flooding. I believe tomorrow is lightning. And then we'll also have a night on downburst wind, another night on dust storms, and I'm forgetting one night. What am I forgetting? What's the last one? Heat. Yes, heat stress. So each night we'll start at this same time. Check your local weather office's social media feed, and you'll be able to find the link to tonight's or that night's YouTube video broadcast. So first, John, we're going to be talking about flash flood. Before we even talk about flash flooding, John, can you talk a little bit about what is the what's called the North American monsoon, or the monsoon in the Southwest?
Well, first of all, the monsoon is not a storm. People will say, we're going to have some monsoons this afternoon. No, it is a pattern that sets up when you get the heating of the higher plateau in Mexico starts to draw in water vapor or moisture from the tropical Eastern Pacific, Gulf of California, Gulf of Mexico, and then the flow pattern aloft, the upper level high pressure center, wherever it settles, its clockwise flow will bring that moisture up into the desert Southwest. And you even have thermal lows setting up in the desert Southwest that will also draw in moisture. It's all one big happy party. It's where we have our thunderstorm season, more than half our rainfall crammed into that 3.5 months. And so we look forward to it. Unfortunately, sometimes, as you'll hear a little bit later, the water comes too fast, too quickly. But that's just a quick synopsis of what a monsoon is.
So basically, you get a quick wind shift during the summer, and it's not necessarily that it starts to rain, but we get a shift in the winds that brings in moisture from a different moisture region that we normally wouldn't have, and that's what adds the fuel to these thunderstorms. Is that right, John?
That's right. You go from the generally dry westerlies to a more moist southerly or southeasterly flow, and it's quite a change.
Now, I think the monsoon acts a little different in different parts of the Southwest. Kerry, do we get more of our moisture from the Gulf of Mexico or from like the Gulf of California off the Baja for New Mexico, at least for the monsoon season?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Tim. When we look at like northeast New Mexico, so we're talking Clayton or far northeast plains, they actually see more of their peak rainfall during the spring, and of course their influence is more from the Gulf of Mexico. But as John says, we make that transition to that wind shift. Parts of southwest New Mexico, 2/3 to as much as 3/4 of their annual average precip falls within the monsoon season. So it's a sharp I would say gradient from southwest to northeast, at least across our area, but certainly we do see some impacts even out across the far northeast.
Very good. Hey, Glenn and maybe Jessica, either one of you guys can answer for Arizona. Do you get more of an influence from the Gulf of Mexico or Baja there during the monsoon season?
I could take this. Well, actually, we get a little bit of both. I would say for much of far eastern Arizona, southeastern Arizona, it tends to come a little bit more from the Gulf of Mexico. But as you go west in Arizona, get into the deserts, it tends to be more from the Gulf of California. We have what's called Gulf surges, and basically it's a surge of moisture that pushes up the Gulf of California, aided by, well, multiple things, but the thermal low that John was mentioning, along with thunderstorms that form to our south, help really push that moisture to the north, up the Gulf of California to the deserts of Arizona. Moistens things up, and then we get our thunderstorms, and then, of course, flash flooding.
Very good. Now, I forgot to mention to everybody, if you would like to participate in the conference, or if you have a question for us, feel free to hop on Twitter. We're going to be monitoring the hashtag MAW 2015. So that's Monsoon Awareness Week 2015. So if you have a question for the panel here tonight, feel free to tweet us at, like I said, the hashtag MAW 2015. All right, because I'm pulling up. I don't think we've gotten any questions so far. So I want to talk now, because John mentioned this about we sometimes get too much rain too quickly. And so I thought we'd real quickly talk about what does that mean? What kind of flooding do we see, and does it present itself differently? So Carrie, in New Mexico, how does the flash flooding affect things?
Well, it's interesting, too, on that, Tim. When we talk about flash flooding, we're talking about high-intensity, short-duration rainfall. That's a fancy way to say a thunderstorm. And, let's just talk about Albuquerque. Albuquerque has an elevation difference from the heart of the city to the top of the San Diego Mountains of about 5,000 feet. And you can imagine if you put 1 or 2 inches of rain, even halfway down on the foothills, all that water is going right to the river. And, of course, it's conveyed through channels of what we call arroyos, which are normally dry, and those fill up in a quick hurry. And in fact, 1 inch of rain, or even less, in say 20, 30 minutes, will generate that intense runoff, and that's a flash flood. And we deal with that routinely, as do other areas in the Southwest. So the complex terrain is a factor. The other factor is our thunderstorms during the monsoon don't move very fast, very slow moving. In some cases, it's maybe stationary. And so that contributes, again, to that very localized, high-intensity rainfall that generates those fast-moving waters.
And there's been some pretty hot days this time of year. So we'll have to wait and see, but be prepared.
Did we freeze up?
There we go. I think it's back.
Hi, word.
I think we lost Tim. He seems to be
So I don't.
frozen up. So Jessica and Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the flash flood impacts in the Phoenix area? Continue on our discussion.
Well, from a desert standpoint, we've kind of got a dual threat. We've got the urban areas, and then we have the desert areas, neither of which can handle a whole lot of water in a very short amount of time. So flash flooding is definitely something very significant that we see here during the monsoon. And think back to a couple banner events that we had last year. It only took a few hours to get a certain amount of rainfall that left us with impacts that some people are still recovering from today. So it's incredible power and the effect of water that can fall in such a short amount of time.
And again, it's really amazing. I think you guys hit the nail on the head. It doesn't take that much rain. High intensity short duration does cause us problems really fast.
I imagine each of us or each of our cities, big cities in our areas, can point to one or two incredible events. I remember August 1st, 2006, one flash flooding scenario resulted in more than $200 million damage in El Paso. That same summer, I remember Tucson got nailed, Albuquerque got nailed. That was our wettest monsoon on record, 2006.
And John and everyone, I would also say since 2011, we've dealt with wildfire, burn scars. And wow, hasn't that really changed the landscape in terms of, we're talking about, in some cases, in our burn scars, a quarter inch of rain, a third of an inch of rain, yeah, which is very, certainly nothing to, you would think about. But on a burn scar, boy, generates tremendous floods, and we've dealt with that for the last several seasons as well.
Yeah, and one wildfire can cause a burn scar that gives you issues for the next 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had that in our area with the Monument Fire down by Sierra Vista was back in 2011, and we're now finally getting to the point after about 2 or 3 years where the soils are recovered, where they're not seeing as big of a threat. But like you said, wildfire remains one real threat for quick flash flooding that catches people off guard. And speaking of catching people off guard, one thing I would like to mention is we had Hurricane Norbert, of course, was a big event for Arizona last year. It was Phoenix got their highest rainfall that they ever had in a single day from that event, and it was pretty significant in Tucson as well with several inches of rain. And we had 2 fatalities just north of Tucson from that event. And one interesting thing that occurred was that these were people that they're fatalities, but they were very close to where they lived. So it was on a route very close to their house that they're normally accustomed to driving through, and they must have thought, oh, it doesn't look too bad. So probably one thing to keep in mind is not to really be preconditioned into thinking that, oh, well, I drive through this every day. It doesn't look so bad. You can never tell how deep the water is. That's why we always say turn around, don't drown. So I think that's one thing to really keep in mind. It's just flash flooding is the second deadliest weather phenomenon that we experience in Arizona. And I assume it's the same in New Mexico as well after heat. So most people die in their cars. So it's just not worth it. Just go around, find another way.
Right.
That's true, and that's what we always say is our saying is turn around, don't drown. Now I want to talk to Dan real quick. Dan, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hey, now you're a meteorologist, but you do not work for the Weather Service like I mentioned at the beginning. You work for the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. How is your job? What is the exactly kind of job that you do for the Flood Control District there in Phoenix?
Well, as everybody knows, the National Weather Service, your primary responsibility is warning the public, especially during these flash flooding situations. And what we're doing is our responsibilities are to our district dams, as well as the local communities in and around our area, their emergency responders. So we're trying to give them a heads up, hey, this basin located in your area is starting to fill up with water, we may have some issues. We're dealing with those local, the flood warning community, not so much the public.
Right. Hey, I went to a conference last month. I saw that you guys have an extensive flash flood network set up in and around Phoenix. I was wondering if you get a chance, could you pull up a map to show us what those flash flood gauges look like, so that we can kind of see how you've distributed those gauges around a highly metropolitan area?
Coming at you now. We'll grab the screen share in just a second.
Not a problem. I don't think I'm stretching it, but I think Phoenix has one of the more dense, in an urban environment, gauge network that I've seen. And not only do they have a nice gauge network, but it's all telemetered, so you can actually access this information. They can get this information, which helps get it to us, and the Weather Service gets that information so that we can make our decisions as quickly as possible. But it also gets it to other decision makers, like Dan was saying. It gets it to people that have to make decisions on close roads or things like that. So it's a real good thing, and I believe, Dan, the public can access this as well, right?
Yeah, actually, all of our gauge information. So what he was talking about is we have an alert network here, and it's composed of 355 not weather stations, but stations, and they're spread out all across Maricopa County and the surrounding watersheds. Of that, we've got over 300 rain gauges. We've got over 38 weather stations. We've got over 150 stream gauges and impoundment gauges behind dams as well as in washes and rivers. And so, again, these systems or these stations help us give a heads up and an early warning as, okay, we have flow coming down Indian Bend Wash, for example, for those of you in the Phoenix area, and that's in Scottsdale. We can see how much flow is coming down Indian Bend Wash. We can talk to City of Scottsdale and let them know, hey, you guys want to close those unbridged crossings through IBW. So that's kind of like a first look at getting the data. And again, all this information is up for the public to see. You just go to fcd.maricopa.gov and click on gauge information, which is right there from the webpage, and it's all displayed on a Google map here, which I think, are we sharing this right now?
Yeah, we can see it on the screen.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so every one of those little plus points on the map there represent a rain gauge that's spread out, again, around the county. We also have our stream gauges, and again, we can see weather information. But again, the alert system just gives us an early heads up as to what we can expect when a flooding event actually starts on.
Very good. I've always been impressed with that network of rain gauges that you have. Part of the problem that we've always had in the Southwest U.S. is data points. And I know in El Paso we'll see some heavy rain, and it's very hard to tell. The radar, so people understand, the radar does give us an estimate of what it thinks the rain, or how much rain has fallen. But a lot of things can affect that. If there's dry air underneath the thunderstorm, as the rain falls out of the thunderstorm, it can actually evaporate, so the radar begins to overestimate the rainfall. And then if there's hail inside the thunderstorm, that tends to send us back more returns on our radar, and then the radar starts to overestimate the rainfall. So, it's our job as meteorologists to figure out which is the radar over or underestimating. But when you have an actual rain gauge network with, like Dan said, with over 300 gauges?
That's correct.
Wow, that's incredible. That can really give you some confidence, at least from the forecast office, and let decision makers to make some really good decisions. All right, so I think we got a question on Twitter. So let's see. Does the NWS have a reverse 911 capability for counties in Arizona? Actually, it's Rim County in Arizona was the specific question. But I don't think we do in El Paso for New Mexico. Glenn or Jessica, do you guys have reverse 911 capabilities?
Not that I'm aware of. The closest thing I could think of is the warning system when we issue flash flood warnings. It'll automatically go to cell phones.
Wireless.
That's nationwide. That's the cell phone alert systems, which most of the newer phones, pretty much all of them now, have that capability of bringing in those government alerts. So anytime there's a flash flood warning issued for a location that your cell phone is in, your cell phone would alert you to that.
So those are you're talking about the WE alerts.
Yes.
And people need to be aware, at least today, what we're talking about, they only alert basically for tornado warnings and for flash flood warnings, which that's what we're talking about today. But they won't alert you if, say, there's a flood advisory, some of that nuisance flooding, or if there's a severe thunderstorm coming. So you do need to just be aware that that's not always going to be the best way to get the information. If we issue that tornado warning or that flash flood warning and you're inside the polygon, or your phone thinks you're inside the polygon where we issue it for, it should pop up on your phone and let you know that you're in a threatened area. I know that the cell phone companies have gotten better at narrowing that down. There was a problem for a while that they would alert every cell phone in an entire county, and I know in the western part of the U.S. we have very large counties, so that could be a bit of a distraction.
Hey Tim.
Yeah.
Oh. Tim, I wanted to add. Went to the wrong person. I wanted to add a couple of things. Something that Doñana County here is doing, they're trying to model after what Dan showed us on the map there. So Maricopa County has been a model for some of the other areas in the Southwest. At least I can speak for Doñana County. Also, Tim, remember you went all over our county warning area, found the low water crossings, took pictures, thoroughly documented the site, got the GPS, location, so that we can look on our radar and find out where the issues are, and that can really, really help out when we're issuing flash flood warnings. So each office of the National Weather Service has their strength and things that they have contributed to when it comes to keeping the public safe during flash flood situations.
John, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm a big fan of knowing, if you know where the flood is going to be, you need to understand how the water gets there. And in the Weather Service, we have access to lots of different basins, basically the way the water moves from one place to another and how all these basins are connected. And many times these basins all drain down to a single point, like a low water crossing or a lake or a river. And in if we know that it's and we know that for most of the time that water just stays in a rural environment until it crosses the road at X point. We need to know where that point is, and then we can put those basins on our radar, and we can see when that basin starts to fill in with those radar returns. Like I said, the radar does estimate how much the rain falls. Then we can start to give people a heads up before that water starts to move down that basin and cross that road, and potentially give people especially like emergency managers or road crews for AZDOT or NMDOT, gives them the opportunity to get out their barriers and get those roads closed before that water even arrives. Because you don't want the cars to find out you don't want water. You find out that your road has got water across it and then have to close the road. You'd like to close the road before the water gets there so that you can protect people. So I think that's a great point. Like you said, either knowing where those low water crossings are or having a rain gauge network scattered across your area so you know where the heavy rain is falling. All of those things really, really help in the forecast office and for the decision makers like our partners in emergency management.
Yeah, I noticed Alex, his microphone is off, but his part of California, when the monsoon plume of moisture that comes out of Mexico ships further west, they have some real issues in southeast California in the deserts especially. There, his microphone is available.
Hey, Alex, you're unmuted. Can you talk about your part of Southern California and some of the flash flooding issues you have there? Wow. Well, the other thing that I know that a lot of people, it's been in the news a lot, is that you guys, a big hunk of California has been under drought. But even when you're in a drought situation, and many times when you're in a drought situation, that can actually make the flash flood potential worse. Is that right?
Mm. Wow.
And you mentioned lightning. We'll talk about lightning will be our impact that we'll be talking about tomorrow. So feel free to join us again tomorrow when we're talking about lightning. Again, if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, you can tweet them at hashtag MAW2015. And let's see, I think, let's see, we got a question earlier. So if you would like to use that as a way to talk to us, you can ask a question. Like I said, it's Monsoon Awareness Week, so that's MAW 2015. Hey, let's talk about safety so that when people are, they do come up on a flood or they know the potential is there for flooding, what should they do? Carrie, can you talk a little bit about flood safety, or who did I say for flood safety?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to
Okay.
that. I wanted to say real quickly, though, too, Tim, that let's put a plug in for our spotter network in Cocoa Rods, because some of our most flash flood-prone areas in New Mexico are west central, the Four Corners area. Yeah, unfortunately, radar coverage is pretty poor. And so we really rely on those ground truth, those citizens that are helping us with those reports. And so that's a great way for those watching this video to get involved. That's how you can really help us.
Hey, Carrie,
and have those reports.
What is Cocoa Ross? Can you explain that a little bit more, and how do people get
Yeah.
involved with that?
Sure. So Cocoa Ross is an acronym: Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. And it's cocoaross.org is the website. And it's just an easy way for folks to, it's precip only. So you just you install a 4-inch rain gauge in your backyard and you report. And we all benefit from it. We love it. We're cuckoo for Cocoa Ross, even John. But as far as safety, I would say this, Tim. As little as 6 to 8 inches of fast-moving water, you will lose control of your vehicle. And as it goes up from there, a foot of water starts, carrying you downstream. 2 feet of water, you're pretty much done for. So it takes very little water fast-moving water to cause lots of problems. So turn around, don't drown. That's our tagline. And I'll tell you what, I think over the years, it's made a huge difference.
So, Carrie, you're not safe in a high-clearance, macho, four-wheel drive truck?
Your truck doesn't count, John, no. No, that's just it, right? It's Archimedes' principle. We won't go there because I know Tim's giving me that look, but the upward force of water is tremendous. So, 6 to 8 inches of fast-moving water is going to cause lots of big problems, and that's not very much. That's half a foot, just over.
Yeah, I think we may have lost Tim, but we are nearing the end of the half hour here. So I guess we can continue discussing until Tim comes back on and cuts us off.
Well, I was going to say, John, real quick, just to piggyback on what Glenn was talking about, do not go around barricades. Barricades are put there for a reason. And I don't know how many times we see or hear about reports of, that person evidently had more information than anyone else, went around the barricades, and they get caught. So let's, we talk about safety, turn around, don't drown, but some common sense goes a long way.
Yeah, Kerry, in Arizona we have a thing called the stupid motorist law, and it's exactly as what it says. If you act stupid and you drive around barricades, you're potentially liable for the cost of your rescue, and it's just not a good idea. And I think one other thing that's important to hit upon with regard to flash flooding, especially those people that are new to the Southwest, the rain tends to fall first a lot in the mountains, and of course it runs off from the mountains, so there could be flooding in normally dry streams and washes or dry washes, and it's not even raining where you're at. And so that's why, especially in monsoon season, it's never a good idea to just go into a normally dry wash, because you just never know when the water might come up without really any kind of significant indication as such.
Right.
It's a very, very important point.
I was thinking of Alex, who was stuck in a traffic jam earlier, and could you imagine something like that when flash flooding is occurring? That would be very unfortunate, but if you are a motorist, you're the #1 victim in flash flooding. So we don't we're trying not to be cute with this turn around, don't drown phrase. It really saves lives, and we want you to pay attention to that. And we just issued moments ago, or I mean an hour ago, we issued a flash flood warning for one of our counties here in far west Texas, and it's just one of these things where it's going to be happening all through monsoon season, and you don't start to rest when it comes towards the end of monsoon season, such as September. Just think at the last 2 Septembers in Arizona and New Mexico and far west Texas. It's been tragic. So, we have a few months ahead of us, a long haul, but hopefully you've gained some good safety information today.
Yeah, I apologize, everyone. I kept dropping out. My internet connection dropped out, so I apologize. Did we get a chance to talk about flood safety in Arizona?
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, I think you wanted to talk a little bit more about your work there with the Flood Control District of Maricopa County. What should people do? We talked about some flood safety issues, but you also wanted to touch on flood insurance. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question we get from residents here in Arizona, and this will apply in New Mexico, California, no matter where you are. How do you protect your property, specifically your home? Most people don't realize that a typical homeowner's policy doesn't cover damages from flash flooding. You need to go out and get a separate policy for that. On top of that, if you want to go out and get flood insurance, now's the time to do it, because it's a 30-day waiting period before your policy becomes effective. So if you want to go out there and learn more, you can go to www.floodsmart.gov. You can learn more about your types of policies, how you can get your coverage, and you can also find out whether or not you need coverage if you live in a floodplain or not. I guess in some respects in Arizona, everybody lives in a floodplain.
You're kind of fair game during the monsoon.
Right. Just depends on how big an event we get. But again, it doesn't hurt to go look, and it's not worth losing all of your precious items that you own because you didn't realize you didn't have insurance. It just takes a few minutes to go take a look, and it really doesn't cost that much compared to what you might lose if you do have flooding in your home.
So basically, if I heard you right, what you don't want to do is like we had last year with a tropical cyclone moving into the southwest, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, that's going to be here in 2 days. I'm going to run out and get my flood insurance. That's not going to work.
It's too late. And you know what? This is the perfect time now to at least do a little bit of research here. The official start of the monsoon season is here, but we know onset still isn't, probably for a little ways off, so you've got some time.
Very good. Well, I see we've gone a little past 30 minutes after the hour. I know we're working with actually technically 3 different time zones between Mountain Daylight Time, Mountain Standard Time, and Pacific Daylight Time. Real quickly, I'll run down the list here. Does anyone have any closing remarks? John, what's something that people can take away from this tonight?
Well, as we mentioned before, turn around, don't drown. If you're a motorist, don't suffer from that superiority complex when you're behind the wheel. And as was mentioned before, you don't know if the power of moving water has washed away a portion of the road, and you think you're familiar with, oh, I've been there before. That's only about 3 inches deep, and it could be 3 feet deep. So that's a couple of things you can take away.
Very good. Carrie, any last thoughts?
Well, I really like the point that was made earlier about the wireless emergency alerts. That's the WEA, the WEA. Make sure that your phones, are set up to receive those warnings, because we've had some good luck here in Albuquerque last year with individuals receiving those, and those individuals taking action. That's the one thing. You get the alert or the warning, but then it's taking that action. So take some time this week and in the coming days to really, brush up on those safety rules, not just for your local, but maybe a business, if you're, in a community type, and help us spread the word. Be our ambassadors, and we appreciate the effort.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of year because we're just sitting on the start of monsoon season. So this is the exact time of year. That's why we do this week each year, and we talk about different impacts so that you're ready to protect you, your family, or your property from the different impacts or different threats that we can see during monsoon season. Hey, Glenn, do you have any last thoughts?
I think you all pretty much hit it. The main thing, just don't drive into flooded waters. I think that's the biggest takeaway message when it comes to monsoon safety with flash flooding. We don't want you to be the next statistic when it comes to flash flooding.
You know, I've done some flash flood training, and the interesting thing was that in Colorado, they have had several big flash floods, and what they like to say to people is, it's better to get wet than to drown or be dead. So they basically say, get out of your car if you get caught in a flash flood and move to higher ground. And so they basically say, because a lot of people sit in their cars and go, I don't want to get wet, it's raining and everything. And they sit there, and then before they know it, they get swept off the road or something. But basically, if you avoid the flash flood in the first place, is better. But if you do get caught in one, move to higher ground as soon as you can to avoid any problems, or to save your life. Your car's not worth it. Getting wet is not worth it. Just protect your life. That's the most important thing we could think of. Hey, Jessica, Dan, do you guys have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot of stuff, and I think what's a really great example is the fact that Fawcett's office right now, you guys are in the middle of warning operations, so it's not just the Arizona monsoon or the New Mexico monsoon or the West Texas monsoon, it's the Southwest monsoon. So even if we aren't seeing the impacts of it in the Phoenix area quite yet, it is impacting other parts of the region, so it's always just carry all these safety messages with you if you are traveling across different parts of the region as we are in the heart or getting into the start of the monsoon.
And Tim goes away again. I was going to say too, Jessica, one of our local fire department guys said that the water in our arroyos, the concrete line, move at about 35 miles per hour. So we talk about the depth of water, but it's also how fast. And you think about 25, 35 mile per hour floodwaters, that's pretty tremendous force.
And it's helpful, I would say, from like a urban perspective, it's helpful to understand where those areas are that are more prone to flood, even with just a little bit of water. So for any Phoenicians that are on the hangout right now, I'm talking about the I-70 corridor, which is just a big concrete bathtub. It doesn't drain very well, so you can need to identify those areas beforehand. So if you are out and about, away from home or planning to leave home, maybe during an active storm day, depending on where you're at in your area, those areas, so maybe avoid those intersections and don't even attempt to go through it, even if there is a little bit of water.
Alrighty, well, I see it's about 40 minutes after the hour. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I think we had a great conversation, got some good safety tips and a better understanding of how flash flooding can affect the southwest U.S. Also got to hear a little bit about what the monsoon season was. I'd like to thank John Fawcett, Carrie Jones, Jessica Nolte, Dan Hines, and let's see, Alex Tardy and Glenn Lader from the different weather offices around the southwest U.S. Tomorrow, like I said, we'll be talking about lightning, so feel free to join us, think of some questions. Remember, we'll be answering questions at hashtag MAW2015, so feel free to go ahead and send those in, and we'll be, like I said, we'll be talking about lightning. And I want to thank everybody who joined us, and everyone have a great and safe evening and safe monsoon season. So thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, we lost